Welcome to An Author's Journey, where a prominent author chats with us about their journey as a writer. I'm your host, Joe Pizzo. Our guest today is Dr. Tracey Severns, who has served in the field of education as a paraprofessional, special education teacher, vice principal, principal, director of student performance, superintendent, adjunct professor, and chief academic officer for the New Jersey Department of Education. With a BS in psychology, an MAT in teaching, and an EDD in educational administration and supervision, Dr. Severns has provided professional development dealing with evidence-centered leadership, data analysis, systems thinking, professional learning communities, assessment literacy, student engagement, special education, educational equity, and school improvement on the state, national, and international levels. In 2009, she was one of 8 principals representing the United States in Brazil as part of an exchange program sponsored by the Bureau of Educational and Cultural Affairs, the U.S. Department of State, the American Councils for International Education, and the National Council of State Secretaries of Education. Dr. Severns has received numerous awards. In 2011, she received the Middle Level Leadership Award and was selected as New Jersey's Visionary Principal of the Year. In the same year, Dr. Severns was named a National Distinguished Principal. In 2012, while principal of Mount Olive Middle School, her school was named a National School of Change, one of only 6 schools in the United States to receive this distinguished honor. In 2014, Dr. Severns was named Educator of the Year by the Peace Islands Institute and was awarded an honorary doctorate in public service from Georgian Court University. In 2018, Dr. Severns joined Rutgers Graduate School of Education's Center for Effective School Practices as their leadership and learning strategist. In the same year, she became the host of Disrupt Ed TV, a program dedicated to challenging the status quo in education through courageous conversations with change leaders from various fields. When the pandemic shuttered schools in March 2020, Dr. Severns created Winds and Wonderings, a daily Zoom forum for educators to raise questions and share solutions to address the unprecedented problems facing the nation's schools. Dr. Severns interviewed thought leaders including Heidi Hayes Jacobs, Rick Wormley, Ted Dintersmith, and Pam Moran. In 2024, to address the increasingly negative emotional tone in schools, Dr. Severns began doing stand-up comedy for various educator audiences. Her newest presentation is entitled, Let's Laugh, How to Bring Joy Back to Schools. We all need a little bit of that today, don't we? Dr. Severns has written articles about leadership and learning. Her first book, Mistakes, Missteps, Missed Opportunities, Lived Lessons from the Real World of Educational Leaders, is currently in publication via Youthlight, and we'll discuss that momentarily. Dr. Severns serves individuals, schools, districts, organizations, and state agencies through Teach for Results, an educational consulting company she began in 2006. Her services include strategic planning, leadership training, team building, professional development, and coaching. Dr. Tracey Severns, thank you for taking an author's journey with us today.
And thank you for your interest in talking with me, Joe. It is truly an honor and a pleasure to be here.
Dr. Severns, what has motivated you to pursue a career in education?
Well, when I think about that, really 2 things come to mind. The first is that I genuinely believe that education is some of the most important work that anyone can do, that truly we do high stakes work. We make futures possible. The second reason is because it can be so much fun. Anyone who has spent even 5 minutes with a child and has experienced their personality, their sense of humor, their wonder and curiosity about the world. I mean, I don't know how I could have done anything else. Education so serves the heart and the mind. It's truly been a career that is one of great purpose and passion for me.
In my 50 years in the classroom, I've seen the same thing. And the greatest teachers, and there's so many of them that don't get recognized, unfortunately, but the greatest teachers have the greatest enthusiasm. And you bring that enthusiasm. So I'm sure that the students would pick up on that immediately.
Yes.
Now, of all the jobs in education that you've held, and as we listed earlier, there are a few of those.
Yes.
Which one has given you the greatest satisfaction?
Well, some may be surprised to hear this, but my favorite job was middle school principal. Now, I know that many people don't even like their own middle school children, let alone 1,200 of other people's middle school children. But I love middle school kids. And let's face it, Joe, somebody has to love them. We have to see, and here's the reason is I believe middle school kids are trying to figure out who they are and where they fit into the world. And they so need people to see them and to respect them and to be interested in them and to help guide them along their path. So I love middle school kids. I even love the crazy middle school teachers who work with middle school kids. So that was profoundly meaningful to me.
Now, there are also some challenges in a middle school job as well as other jobs. But I guess my question here would be, which of all of those jobs that you've held has been the most challenging?
Oh, well, all positions in education present an array of challenges. The one that I would say for me was the most challenging was superintendent. And the reason is, Joe, that my heart is with the kids. That's where I draw my sense of purpose. And the superintendent role simply took me too far from the kids. When I would walk through the schools, I didn't feel like I knew them in the way that I did when I was a teacher, a vice principal, or a principal. I didn't feel like as connected to the kids. I also felt very challenged by the Board of Education, managing the 9 individuals with 9 different sets of priorities, dare I say, agendas, managing the public. It just was something that is certainly a very important job, but it wasn't where I felt the most satisfied and successful.
It's interesting you say that because many of the administrators with whom I speak, principals, assistant principals, superintendents, they all reflect upon the days when they were themselves in the classroom and the joys they had and the wonderful lessons they were able to do and the smiles they would see. It's a different world. Yeah, it's tough to move from that world, but career-wise, some folks take a different direction than others. So I laud you for holding on to those values. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, on your website, Teach for Results, you mentioned that your new book, Mistakes, Missteps, Missed Opportunities, quote, is a collection of lessons based on errors made by real educational leaders. Each entry includes the error, the impact of the error, a description of the context in which the error occurred, and the lesson learned as a result. The goal is to share the times leaders have struggled, stumbled, fell, even failed, so others can recognize warning signs and anticipate and avoid a similar fate, unquote. Now, what is your thought process behind emphasizing a range of struggles and failures as a key component of the successes celebrated in schools today?
One of my observations is that there seems to be a desire to go right to perfect, that there's this idea that, that we should be able to just be successful right out of the box. And the truth is that success comes through hard work, through the challenges, the struggles, and all of the lessons that are learned along the way. I feel like it's important to talk. It's important to talk about the ways that we are humbled by the poor choices we make, by the errors along the way, and all of the learning that occurs on what is really a rocky pathway. The journey is not smooth. In my career, I went from a paraprofessional at a school for children with special needs to assistant commissioner to chief academic officer. And there are people who observe that from a distance and say, oh, how wonderful for you. That must have been this seamless trajectory from para to assistant commissioner. And it wasn't. There were many, many heart-wrenching, embarrassing, soul-crushing challenges along the way. And I really believe that I learned so much more from those difficulties than from the successes. And the success then, when it does come, is so much sweeter when it is a product of a struggle than something that is just easy.
You seem to be very open and honest about the struggles and the difficulties of moving through different positions. And I think that's evident right at the beginning of your book, because you opened with one of your own missteps. And I'd like to quote it. You say that one of your missteps is, quote, including too many recommendations in teacher evaluations, unquote. And as you note, a teacher receiving these recommendations will be overwhelmed by the number of suggestions that tend to shut down the recipient's brain. So if you would, please share with our listeners your solution that takes advantage of the rule of threes.
Yes, I realize that my very naive approach to thinking that I can help people improve by telling them all the things that they could do better or differently was so misguided, that people can only take in so much, and there becomes a sense of just being overwhelmed, of being frustrated, of almost helpless and hopeless. What we need to do is prioritize and pick. What are those high leverage opportunities? What is something that the person could really get their arms around and believe that when they work on it, that they can improve? We all need what I refer to as a realistic expectation for success. People who believe that something is too hard, it's too far, it's too heavy, it's too difficult, they just don't tend to try because they almost give up on themselves before they begin. What we need to do is to help everyone believe that with effort and energy and attention, that they can grow and they can develop, that they remain hopeful throughout the process. So what I would say is don't do what I did. I thought if I tell this poor soul the 13 things that she could do to be, to get better, that as if it would instantaneously help her go from, to be a 4, so to speak, in our, teacher evaluation. Sometimes the 4 is the highest score. That isn't how we get there. We do that through incremental steps and stages. And key to helping someone grow is to allow them to improve at a pace that is reasonable and that they can continue to forge ahead, believing that they'll get to that place all in good time.
Now, it seems to me that you have taken a unique approach in putting this book together. Most books, and I guess this would go generically into the self-help category in education. Most of those books will tell you how to, what you should. Here are the 4 ways that, and focus mainly on success, and more success. But the main question that you pose right in the first chapter of your book is, and I'll quote, why a book about mistakes, missteps, and missed opportunities? And then it is such an undefined area in that genre. Rather than saying what we should, you're saying, why did we focus on the things that go wrong? So if you would, please make a distinction, because I know when I spoke with you personally on another occasion that you defined 3 terms, and I think those are important for our audience to know. That's mistakes, missteps, and missed opportunities. And you see each of those as being complementary to each other, not obviously in a positive sense, but working together where the negatives can easily outweigh the positives.
Yeah, so I see each as distinct. So in my mind, a mistake is something where you knew better and you didn't do better. You have some experience, you have some insight, some knowledge, and yet even with that, you made a poor choice. You moved in a less than desirable direction. You made an error. A misstep is when you're a novice and it's your first time. So when you're walking a path for the very first time, you may misstep, but it's because you're a new traveler. You don't know, and there are many things like when we start a new job, when we fill a new role, we are presented with unfamiliar challenges, and we may misstep. We may make an error. And the reason is we simply lacked the expertise or the experience because it's our first time. A missed opportunity is different. The regret, if you will, for the person who makes a misstep or a mistake or a misstep, the regret is around what they did. A missed opportunity is when the regret is for what we didn't do. The times we didn't raise our hand, we didn't accept that invitation, we didn't go for that job. Missed opportunities are those times when we didn't act and upon reflection later wish we had. Like, I believe that this is unique and important because so many of the books that line my shelves are books that portray portraits of perfection and success stories where leaders say, well, here's what you should do. You should do this and do that. And I thought that was just so off-putting for me to act as if anyone has all the answers to be the perfect leader. I think so much can be learned through the humility, through the times when we've done something that we regret later, and to be honest about sharing those.
If I may, it seems as if your approach is counter to what I would call the Simon Says approach. Do this, do this, do this, do this. It's more, here are some opportunities. Let's focus in on what's manageable, maybe one or two of these at a time, and then make it a growth process rather than a right, wrong, plus minus process.
Yes. And I so appreciate that you said that, Joe, because, when we teach kids, we tell them about the importance of a growth mindset, and we encourage them to take academic risks. And yet, where is that same philosophy, if you will, or approach at work with adults? Adults seem very reluctant, very reticent to share times that they have struggled, times where they have, they tried to do something and then failed. I just find that if we really want to be authentic and we want to show kids and others that the best instructional leaders remain instructional learners, and learners are flawed. Learners make mistakes. They do something that upon reflection, they say to themselves, I would do that better or differently next time. And how wonderful is that? That is truly an insight that will last a lifetime.
Very well said. We have too many times, I think, in our profession, looked at how can we make things so much better without realizing there are steps along the way, and things can be more manageable if we take a more sensible, more manageable approach.
Yes.
And don't forget what it's like to be a kid.
Mm-hmm.
That's as important as anything, to have that wide-eyed innocence once in a while. It's not a bad thing.
It is. And, my interest was to write this more as a de-influencer. Every kid, all of these, people, I want to be an influencer. And that's about portraying a degree of perfection that simply isn't real. And what I thought about is I want to write from the perspective of the chef who admits to burning the brisket, the model who allows herself to be photographed without makeup, and the parent who teaches about parenting but loses it on her toddler or teen, because none of us are that perfect. And that perception, promulgated largely through social media, creates immense pressure. And so we hide, and we don't we don't talk about these times that we've struggled, but that's where we are human. That's the most human, most humbling. That vulnerable space is, I think, the most honest of all. And I wanted to write from that place of honesty and humanity and humility.
The honesty, humanity, and humility, it seems, is built upon a foundation of integrity.
Yes. Yes.
All right, let's go to your second chapter.
Mhm.
You address this to rookie administrators, and your focus seems to be on, quote, missteps made and missed opportunities when transitioning to a new role or a new school district, unquote. Now, the sections including hitting the ground running, trying to take on too much at once, trying to move too far too fast, and believing I needed to have all the right answers are addressed in what I think are your foundational section, which is putting results over relationships. That seems to be the direction that, in fact, your entire book takes. So in your mind, how can these rookie administrators benefit from your advice?
I think it's important to realize that you can't go it alone. That when you lead a school, you're leading a team, a group, a collaborative. And there is so much power in building the relational trust necessary to move an organization forward. I think there are mistakes, or in this case, missteps, that rookie administrators make when they believe they're going to go in and improve the school through mandates, and they're going to lead their school from the office. You really need to work alongside people. You need to establish trust. You need to use your EQ as much as your IQ, because this work is not done in a vacuum. It's not done alone. It's highly relational, and developing the relationships that allow you to ask more of others is critically important. And I think is a lot of naivete that, with good intention, people go kind of running in that building, and they want to make things happen. But sometimes what we need to do is slow down and establish a foundation on which we can build the success. And I think tempering the eagerness of that new rookie leader is an important piece, that we need to cultivate relationships based on credibility, on reliability, on knowing each other, before we forge ahead, and or at least as we start to take on the work. I'm a real believer in leading from what I call the land of and. In this, and Jim Collins wrote about this in Good to Great. He wrote about the tyranny of the or and the genius of the and. And the genius of the and reminds us that we can have, for example, in our classrooms, rigor and relationships. We can take care of teachers and students. We can, do good work and develop trust. And I think so many times people view the world is in these mutually exclusive ways, like as if this dichotomous approach, we're doing this or this. It's not a bifurcated path. Like, we can really do both, but we must attend to each in order to move our schools forward.
Now, in chapter 3, you seem to continue this line of reasoning. Chapter 3 is for practicing administrators, and you feel that the major mistake that's featured in this chapter is, quote, seeing your school through a deficit lens, unquote. And you look at Xander and Xander, who've said, quote, be witness to the good, unquote. Now, how do you believe that this mistake weakens the credibility and the potential of the administrator as a significant and respected agent of change?
You know, Joe, I believe every morning we wake up and we make a choice. And as you lead your building, as you walk through the hallways, you can go on a treasure hunt or a witch hunt. And my promise to you is you will always find what you're looking for. I have worked alongside leaders who are quick to tell me all that is wrong with their school, with the facility, with a couple students, with a let's say a challenging staff member, and they seem to always look for the negative, and they focus on what isn't good, what's not going well, and the reason that that's dangerous and deleterious to the work is it causes you to continue to focus on that, and you can spiral downward. What, as a leader, we need to go on that treasure hunt, looking for the gifts, looking for what's good, bearing witness to all that is going well, and look to scale up success. You know, I read a book once called The 9 Lies About Work. And what the authors talk about is that we can look to improve in one of two ways. We can scale up success, or we can mitigate and manage the weakness. And there's so much value, so much positive momentum that can be gained by seeking to scale up the success. When you walk around a school and you look for the good, you're going to find the good, which builds a degree of hopefulness and enthusiasm and optimism for all that can be. So, what I want for people to do is to be realistic. Yes, I mean, you know, when something is not going well, we have to name it and address it. But we have to maintain a positive outlook. We need to cultivate an emotional tone in our schools that is hopeful, so that everyone believes that when we do this work and we do it together, that we really can make amazing things happen.
Now, in chapter 4, that's the longest one out of all of your chapters, and that's for experienced administrators. So, would you kindly share one or two of the nuggets that you've put together for those experienced administrators?
And this is going to be so hard because as I look through the table of contents, there are so many that I think are really powerful and important. Here's one of them that I think is really key. And it's called Not Experiencing Your School from the Perspective of Your Students. You know, Joe, I believe that many leaders believe they know what it's like to be a student in their school or a teacher in their school, and I believe they don't. I think if we really want to know the student experience, we need to randomly pull a child's name out of a hat and live their life from the minute they get on the bus to the end of the day. And I will tell you that I have challenged administrators in the past to know your school deeply from the inside. And many have come back to me and confessed, I didn't make it. I couldn't make it to lunch. I was starving. I have a 1 o'clock lunch, and the sixth grade teachers decided they didn't want kids to have breakfast, hypothetically, right? I found some of the classes so boring that it just was hard to make it through the day. Or I found myself, you know, so sitting for so long that it literally became painful. We need to do what's called contextual inquiry, which is be curious about what it's like to be in the roles that we lead. So I love that one, that idea of living the life of one of our students. Um, I think another one is waiting for buy-in. I think sometimes I work with leaders who say, well, I'm going to wait until everyone is bought in before we move forward. And what Paul Bambrick Santoyo teaches us in Driven by Data is that buy-in is a product, not a prerequisite. So we have to help people understand the why. We need to nurture a willingness. We need to build capacity so people are able, but we cannot wait. We cannot wait for people to feel like doing what's in the best interest of kids. So I think remaining, like as the leader, you must lead, which sometimes means being in the front and going places people may not want to go right away, and helping them see that this is making that difference, and then building the momentum from there. I guess that's just, there's so many. I mean, I think about that idea of competition as opposed to collaboration. I mean, people who are caused to compete don't collaborate. And that's a real mistake that sometimes principals make when they pit individuals against each other, or a superintendent who has the elementary schools competing against each other. They don't share the secrets of success if they think it's going to knock them out of the number one slot in the leaderboard. We really need to think more about the psychology of competition, and focus more on what I call collaboration. Joe, collaboration is when we work and learn together, not just like collaboration when we're talking. Collaboration is truly
Right.
rolling up our sleeves and working together in the best interest of all of our students.
And that takes a lot of ability as well as patience,
Yes.
because not everyone makes it to the same place at the same time, and not everyone has the same vision. So dealing with that multitude and array of visions and differences is the challenge for administrators, I know.
Hmm.
Now, in chapter 5, you put the focus on yourself, and you talk about your own personal mistakes and missed opportunities. And to me, the one that has the greatest impact on the teaching community, as well as all the professional communities, and when I say professional communities, I include law enforcement, media, medicine, and so many more. That section is entitled Not Being Home.
Hmm.
Now, what do you miss out on by not being home?
I will tell you, Joe, of all the regrets in my career, and there are many, my greatest is that there were many nights that I went home and was not present. And and what I missed, was not just the big things. It was those little moments of really listening to my children, to really being present with my husband, to even just being quiet with myself. And I think that in retrospect, in many ways, I did a better job of raising other people's children than my own, because I was so called to the work. I felt like it was so important, and that they needed me. And when I went home, I don't think I had that same feeling. I just, I would drive home, and my body was there, but my mind was still at work. And I am saddened, and I am sorry, genuinely sorry, for all of the times that I was not truly with my family.
It's difficult when all those demands are placed on educators in whatever position, in the classroom, outside of the classroom. Uh, the the fact that problems don't get solved in 10 minutes or in one meeting, but they continue on, and your mind is still working through those problems as you approach the reality of family and friends and your social side as well. Yeah, it's a challenge, and balancing that is not easy. I agree. Let me ask you this, taking a little bit different direction. In the classroom, what's the place of failure?
Well, I mean, I've always believed that if we're asking questions in a classroom that the kids are getting right, then we're not asking the right questions. That these are, I remember that old song. This is how old I am, Joe. There was a song that was like things that make you go, like what those ponderables,
I
those
remember that
right,
song.
right, where you have that, what do I really think about that? I think when we teach kids at the edge of their fingertips, where they're reaching each day, there should be a certain degree of productive struggle. It shouldn't be impossible, out of the realm of giving kids a chance to be successful, but we shouldn't place it in their lap either. Kids and the brain likes challenge, and failure is a natural outgrowth of trying things that are new to you, and experimenting with new ideas and new skills. So I think we need to make classrooms places that we celebrate mistake. In fact, the book that I'm writing now is along the same lines and for teachers. And I remember one of the teachers saying that every Friday they asked the kids, what was the most important mistake you made this week? I think we need to celebrate struggle and error and failure. I think failure has a very negative connotation. Um, I think I think what we call things matters, and I think we need to celebrate people who take that calculated risk and then really reflect on and learn from what we learned by doing that.
Now, does this advice fit educational leaders as well, administrators, supervisors?
Yes, I think at every level, we all should be learners. I believe that the best educational leaders fill three roles concurrently and fluidly and flexibly. They remain a learner, a teacher, and a leader. So, as a learner, you're learning from your staff, you're learning from your students, you're reading new information, you're staying abreast of the research. As a teacher, you're sharing the things that you've learned freely, openly, generously with your students and with your staff and parents and your colleagues. And as a leader, you're looking to make sound decisions based on what you're learning. And those won't always be right, those won't always be perfect, but we are human. And this is part of what makes being human so stinking interesting.
Dr. Severns, as I mentioned in the introduction, you were named a National Distinguished Principal in 2012 while the principal of Mount Olive Middle School, and your school was named a National School of Change. So let me ask you, what were the major changes that were made at Mount Olive Middle School? And were there times when you were just exasperated in that whole process? And how did you deal with that?
Yes. Well, welcome is not the message that things are not as good as they can be. And what I knew as soon as I got to Mount Olive Middle School was that it was a good school. I mean, it was a good school. And I knew it could be a great school. And conveying the message that while we are good, we are still not great, that we can grow together, that we can ensure more higher levels of success for more kids. When we challenged the status quo and made some of those changes, they were not always welcome, and I was not popular. And I stayed with it and believed in us, in the collective us. And I think one of the major changes was at the middle school is we really sought to become a professional learning community where the whole school worked together in the relentless pursuit of positive outcomes for every kid, where there were no kids that we allowed to reside in the margins, that we used the data, we used um, observation, reflection, investigation, a relentless curiosity to say, how are we doing and how do we know? And then what could we do better or differently? And, when we really changed the way we worked together, we changed what we accomplished together, and we became noticed on a national stage.
Now, I'm sure that you used a lot of assessment and data analysis in this whole process, and that seems to be one of your professional passions. In your opinion, what's the best way for us educators to utilize these categories in our own educational practice?
Well, data has gotten a very bad name. It's a four-letter word that many people consider to be as base as some other four-letter words. I will tell you that I see data differently. I see data as information. It's just information. And for example, I was working with a school, and one of my noticings in this school was that no one was smiling. Joe, this was an elementary school. And from the moment I entered, not the secretaries, not the security, not the students, not the staff, no one. This was a joyless place.
That's sad.
It is very sad. And when I shared my observation with the principal, he seemed a little uncomfortable by that bit of truth, but it was my observational truth. And he said, so what's the first data set we're going to focus on? And I said, smiles. And we walked through his school tallying the smiles. And you know what, Joe? We didn't find any. And smiles is data.
Yes.
How many kids raise their hand is data. How many kids come late? How many kids sign out to go to the bathroom? One of the most insightful data sets in any school is the bathroom sign out sheet, because kids don't ask to leave the room when it's good. So data is not just test scores. Yes, that's important. But data is also when you do an emotional check-in in the morning, how many kids are a 10? How many kids are a 2? Data is see, my emphasis on data is I want to move away from talk to truth, from perception, from just belief to some reality. And I want artifacts and evidence and observation. So it's not just scores and it's not just tests. It's evidence. It's evidence. It's whatever metrics reveal the outcome we're after. That's what I want to focus on. I'm tired of talk. The urgency is too great and there's too much at stake.
And you've taken a little bit different direction in your career recently. And this is unique. You've taken training in comedy.
Yes.
What's your motivation for this decision, and how has comedy seemed to affect your message?
Oh my goodness. Well, Joe, I work with many, many schools and districts, and particularly post-pandemic, I found schools to be places where people were down, where there was a sense of despair. People were despondent. There was anger, angst, anxiety, and I could feel that emotional tenor. And I became increasingly worried for us collectively in education, for the students, for the teachers, for the leaders. Who's going to keep coming to a place if it's joyless? Where's the fun and funny that used to be so much a part of school? And I thought, I can complain about it, I can commiserate about it, or I can do something about it. And I sought to learn about comedy. And I took stand-up comedy lessons, my teacher, Chip, and how to write and deliver. And here's what I found to be the unintended benefit. When I was learning how to write for comedy, it caused me to go through my day and walk through the world looking for what's fun and funny, as opposed to the people who walk through the world looking for the latest affront, for the things that's bad, something's terrible, the latest crisis. So when we're inundated by all of this negativity, I believe we internalize that energy and it becomes part of who we are. I want to be happy. I want to laugh. I want to appreciate the silly and the humorous. And that was the best part of it. And I've always sought to bring comedy into my professional development. Just making people laugh has been the first part of trying to get them to learn. You know, my noticing is when I start with a group of people, if I can help people feel good and start laughing, Joe, they put the weapons down. You know what I'm saying? Metaphorically. And they relax and they open themselves up and say, okay, I'll come with you now. But it just became so hard to break through the walls that I found humor to really be the most humanizing way to connect and then to begin the learning.
There needs to be that connection, because without that, the message will be met with a lot of interference and sometimes resistance as well. Now, we are taking an author's journey today, so let me ask you a general question. Knowing that you've held a variety of jobs in the field of education, how important has writing been in each of those?
It is extremely important. I believe oral and written communication skills are two of the most important sets of skills for anyone in education. Well, I mean, just in general, are we able to clearly and coherently express a thought or opinion? Are we able to communicate it in a way that people can take it in? Writing means you have to understand both the connotation and denotation of words, because words have power. Words convey more than just the meaning. They carry a lot of emotion. And learning how to communicate in writing is, to me, of immense importance. From when I was a teacher, writing comments in the report card, to a superintendent sending out a message, to the community, or as assistant commissioner and trying to help people understand the purpose behind the new standards and new assessments. It is an absolutely important skill.
One thing I constantly tell my students is that whenever they hand in something or whenever they send out something, their name is on it.
Yes.
So it's a reflection of them as writers. If it's filled with mistakes, the impression that folks will get may not be as positive as those who receive a note that maybe doesn't have those mistakes or is more carefully mindful.
Yes. And I'm just going to build on that.
Sure.
One of the things that I do on the side is I do resume writing. I help a lot of people with kind of job coaching. And if you want to know a really fast way to land in the no pile, it's a resume with errors.
Yes.
So I'm agreeing with you that when you put your name on a page, it should represent you, and it does speak to how careful you are. So that is very important.
What you say is accurate. I've worked with students and continue to work with students on their Common App essays. And I tell them that it can't be everybody else's essay. It can't be a formula, but it also has to be something that can be understood and translated by someone looking at it. If it's disjointed, then you are disconnected from that process. Yeah, good point. Let me ask you, as a child, Were you an avid writer?
I would say that I dabbled in writing, Joe. Probably the most writing that I did was in my diary. So I had a diary with a lock, as if anyone would want to read it, where I would pour out my feelings and my fears, and it was an honest place where I wasn't going to be judged, and it really allowed me to process a lot of that inner angst that we experience as a child. I do remember writing once like a children's book in middle school that the teacher liked very well. I remember I would write papers. I've always had kind of a love-hate relationship with writing because I wanted to be, dare I say the P word, perfect. um, and and then I struggle with the right way to say this. Um, so writing this book was painful in many ways, like how to get the words on the page with that flashing cursor that's saying to you, like, come on, don't you have something to say? There were many hours that I stared at a white page, but um, yeah, writing is a struggle, and really um, liberating as well.
Were there one or more teachers, professors, or colleagues who have had a profound and positive impact on your writing style?
I remember an English teacher named Mrs. DeFriest when I was in Cornwall High School, and she was very encouraging for me. She seemed to appreciate both my thoughts and how I was conveying them, and I remember feeling, um, I sat a little taller. I felt a little more confident and competent as a result of her feedback.
Now, how important is it for a leader to be an effective writer?
Quite honestly, I don't know how you can be an effective leader without being a skilled writer. You are called upon to convey thoughts and ideas in a way that um, is accurate and can be heard. Um, I know more and more people are writing with AI. I think that gives you a start, and that can't be your finish. I think you really have to be critical of anything that you ask AI to produce for you, and do a lot of editing and own it. I think that's very important.
AI is being used a lot in special education classrooms to give students a beginning, to give them a starting point. But as you say, it's only that. It's a beginning. It's a framework. The content, the intent, both should be coming from inside the writer, inside their brain as well as their heart.
Yes.
Now, is there a type of writing you enjoy the most, or maybe even the least?
Um, well, let's see. What comes to mind um, is the difference between like technical reading, technical writing, and I don't know what to call it, non-technical reading. So for example, when writing things that are just kind of dry and procedural, I do not enjoy as much as things that you can be a little bit spicy, add a little bit of flavor, some fun analogies. Like one of my friends texted me. She said, "Oh, I'm reading your book, and it's like I can hear your voice." So I like when there is you can maintain an authenticity of voice in what you're writing. And she specifically quoted something, a passage where I say, I had a list as long as my pencil skirt of all the things that I wanted to improve as my school. So people who know me and know like how I dressed, and that ability to use that expression makes it more personal. But writing something that's procedural is kind of dry and doesn't interest me.
I know that we share that same perception, and I think a lot of writers share that perception with you as well. I know there are folks who would like to reach out to contact you. How may they do so?
Well, like a bat signal, if they put that up in the sky. Oh no, just kidding. No, just kidding. Well, my website, teach the number four results. Just Google that. That will bring you right to my website, and there's a way to contact me through there. I am often on Twitter, which is like at Doc Severns. You could DM me. If you Google me, you'll find me. For better or for worse, I'm in there. I tend to be active, and so I would respond to any means of reaching out.
Dr. Tracey Severns, thank you for taking an author's journey with us today. I'm sure that our audience appreciates the honesty which you use to develop each section of your book. Your insights into the process of writing have been most helpful, and your decision to receive training in the area of humor is indeed unique, I must say. Furthermore, the honesty with which you have approached each of the topics in your book, mistakes, missteps, missed opportunities, lived lessons from the real world of educational leaders, reflects your willingness to be vulnerable, to make your point. And you do this with an honesty rather than a sense of pontification. Yeah. And I know that's well appreciated. So thank you for sharing your insight with us today.
Well, Joe, it has been my great pleasure. I've always enjoyed talking with you, learning from you. And I love this opportunity to share my thoughts and with your audience. So thank you.
It's indeed our pleasure. Well, that concludes our journey for this day. Tune in again for more conversations with more authors of interest. For An Author's Journey, I'm your host, Joe Pizzo. Have a wonderful day.